So, update on Project Escort. Basically all the rod bearings look like that. This is one of the main bearings. So yeah, deja vu. Alright, so I guess the question is, what happened? I got no idea what happened. Still trying to figure that out. Looking at the bearings, looking at the pistons, I don't know, I mean it could be a number of things. I had good oil pressure. I had really good oil pressure on startup. I had good oil pressure. I mean, I drove the car to work for almost a month, you know, before things went awry. So, I will say on my first oil change, the oil did come, well, my second oil change, the oil came out shiny. I mean, it looked like glitter, you know. I was being optimistic. I was hoping it was just a moly lube I used, and that gave it its shimmer. I didn't see very many. I did see a few small flakes at the very bottom, like when I dumped the oil out, there was a few like metal flakes, but not like a lot, not enough for me to be concerned about, you know. I cut the oil filter open. I didn't really see anything inside the oil filter, so I don't know. Like I said, I had good oil pressure. You know, on a cold start, oil pressure was like at max 72. Once it warmed up, you know, it was down to like 20 something at idle, 40 something at cruise. The last few days that I ran it, I did notice the oil pressure dropped to almost nothing at idle. And when I was driving home, you know, I was pulling into the neighborhood, you know, and I was, you know, lugging it along, and then I heard, you know, a little bit of a knock at, you know, between 2,000 to 3,000 RPM. I heard kind of a knocking sound, and I was like, well, that's not good. I was like, maybe it's something inside the transmission, who knows. I replaced the lifters, hoping that maybe it was the lifters. It wasn't the lifters. Drove it for probably like 2 more days, you know, because the knock wasn't that bad. It was only like just barely at 3,000 RPM. On the 3rd day, the knock would start at about 3,000 and just continue all the way throughout the rev range, and of course get louder. And at that point, I was like, all right, I know what that is. That's bad. So, drained the oil, pulled the pan, pulled one of the rod bearing caps off, and it was worn all the way down to the copper. So, pretty much right then and there, I was like, alright. Well, actually, no, at first I thought, well, alright, maybe something just weird happened, and I thought about, maybe I can just replace the rod bearing. So I pulled one of the main caps off, and it was worn down. So I was like, alright, well, if I gotta replace the main bearings, I gotta pull the engine. So, pulled the engine. Like I said, as far as what went wrong, the only few possibilities I can think of is, I mean, obviously the major possibility are, you know, my clearances were wrong. Either they were too tight. I don't think they were too tight, because the problem I had was that the crank was really worn and my clearance was really wide. You know, like the max clearance I had was like 0.0035, you know. That was, so I'm thinking maybe my clearances were so, and I did notice it on the bearings. The bearings with the widest clearances had the most damage. So I'm thinking maybe they were just too wide. It couldn't hold a good film on the bearing, and it just washed out and ate the bearings. The other possibility, like I said, they were too tight and it chewed up the bearings, but I really think they were probably, if anything, they were too wide. The other thing, contamination inside the oil. I'm really kind of leaning towards contamination inside the oil, and probably a combination of it being too wide. Maybe a little bit of both. But probably contamination inside the oil, because I noticed on the piston skirts they have vertical scratches, and there were a few vertical scratches inside the... So I did notice a few vertical scratches inside the cylinder bores, which is either a condition where, you know, the piston's rocking back and forth and, you know, you're getting piston slap. I don't think that was a problem because I had the block bored and honed, you know, professionally bored and honed by a very well trusted machinist. So I don't think anything was wrong there. They're cast pistons, so I don't think they expanded too much or anything. It really looks like there's just crud in the oil, and that caused the scratching, the scratches on the piston skirts and on the cylinder bores. Luckily, the scratches on the cylinder bores are not deep. They're not very bad. I could probably just take a ball hone and clean that up, but what I'm going to do is I'm stripping the engine's already basically stripped. I just got to pull the water pump off and it's completely stripped down. I'm going to take the block. Well, I ordered a new crank. I found a crank out of a 2000 Miata. Only had 30,000 miles on it, so it should have lots of life left in it, hopefully. So I got a crank on the way. I decided, since it's still apart, I've kind of been regretting the decision to go with stock style pistons. So I'm going to get a set of forged pistons, leaning between Supertech, because I do kind of like the daily Dakar, but I might go Wiseco, because I hear the Supertechs have a tendency to crack, you know, so probably go Wiseco, whatever. I'm deciding if I want to go, you know, because right now the block's already bored to 83.5. I might take it all the way out to 84, you know, because, hey, why not, you know. Haven't decided yet. But anyways, I'm going to get new pistons. Got a new crank on the way. I'm going to take the block, the crank, back to the machinist, have the block honed, possibly bored if I go with larger pistons, but have it fitted for the new pistons. Have the block hot tanked, because I didn't do that last time. I had it cleaned. You know, the machinist assured me that, yeah, you don't really need to hot tank it, just make sure the bores, the blah blah, the passages and everything are all clean. But I'm going to hot tank it this time. I'm going to have the crank hot tanked. And yeah, I'm starting over at this point, so I mean, not completely over, because in the majority of the parts I can reuse. The oil pump's still good. Rods are still good. They're a little discolored from the bearings heating up, but you can still see the machine marks, and I don't think they're bad at all. Take a bore gauge, make sure they're still round and whatnot, and I can reuse the rods. So yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at right now. Waiting on parts to show up. Gonna have to save some money. Be nice to just go ahead and dump it and get it back on the road, but I'm just gonna start over for the most part. Like I said, new crank. Gonna go forged pistons, taking it all back to the machine shop, have it professionally cleaned, and then even when I get it back, I think I'm going to probably take a pressure washer and actually clean out all the cylinder bores, or clean out all of the oil passages. Just blast the shit out of it and get everything super spotless. because I really think that's what it was. I think I had contamination, and I think that just chewed the bearings up. I think that chewed the bearings up, and that's what scratched the pistons. I mean, other than that, the car ran fine. The car ran great. You know, it ran. I mean, I did pulls on it, and it was fine. It just that's the other thing. I don't think that there was something mechanically that I did wrong, because the car ran great. The car ran straight. I don't think there's anything mechanically that I did wrong, because the car ran strong. You know, there was no problems at startup. There was no problems in the month I drove it back and forth to work. It ran great. You know, generally, if you have a problem where your bearings are too tight, or you know something goes, you know something like that. If you have like a interference issue, you're going to know about that problem in the first few hours of operating the engine. So yeah, I'm really leaning towards contamination or something like that. Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Probably won't be a video for a while because I won't be doing anything. You know, and probably be. I mean, it's Thanksgiving or close to Thanksgiving weekend, so not a whole lot's gonna happen. Waiting on parts, saving money to buy more parts. Probably won't be able to get back to the machine shop for a while. Might be January, because I mean we're into the holiday season. He may not even be open right now. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't really have a true game plan because I still don't really know what went wrong.